Are you a multi-passionate entrepreneur? Wearing multiple hats can be great for your creativity and ambition, but it will fast-track you to burnout if you don't have the right boundaries in place. Literary consultant Licia Morelli has been juggling multiple passions for 15 plus years. Licia's passion lies in guiding businesses to optimize profits and create new revenue streams, consistently implementing effective strategies that yield tangible results. In this interview, Licia shares 3 unconventional boundaries she uses to protect her energy, her sanity, and her bottom line. This conversation was originally recorded for my fundraising event, the Rest and Success Code. Licia's take on boundaries helped me tremendously, and I'm really excited to be sharing her interview with you today. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Licia Morelli. Welcome to Deeply Rested, the podcast that helps people doing good work in the world take incredibly good care of themselves. I'm your host, retired therapist and disillusioned business coach, Megan Megginson. I'm on a mission to help people like you unlearn the rules that keep you trapped in self-doubt so that you can recover from burnout and finally become deeply rested. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to subscribe to this podcast and join our weekly newsletter at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. Now, it's time for the show. Hi, Licia.
Hi, Megan. Thank you so much for having me.
Licia and I are entrepreneurs with something in common. We are both multi-passionate, which is just a fancy way of saying that we like to wear a lot of different hats in our careers. Now, this can be a really fantastic way to explore your interests and your creativity, but can also be a fast track to burnout if you don't have the right boundaries in place. So we're going to talk today about what happens when you have shitty boundaries in your business. And Licia is going to share some of her top tips for setting boundaries that will protect you from burnout as a multi-passionate entrepreneur. So let's get going, Licia. I would love for you to start us off by talking a bit about the different hats that you wear as a multi-passionate entrepreneur.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this, Megan, just because I think it's a topic that a lot of your audience can probably relate to. Because as entrepreneurs, we are innately creative, right? We have a lot of interests and we get super excited about a lot of ideas that come to mind. Ask an entrepreneur how many ideas they've had before breakfast and they're in the like hundreds, right? So I feel like this is so important. So for me, the different hats that I wear, they all fall under the guise of writing, but they're all very different. So yes, I am a copywriter and I write sales copy and website copy, and I'm more of a generalist, right? I can do it all. Blog posts and newsletters and sales pages, everything. But what happens is I'm also, because of my experience in the marketplace, I'm also a strategist for people. So when they hire me for copy, they're not just getting a copywriter, they're getting somebody who understands the nature of sales and how to create copy from soup to nuts on, how to keep selling to their customers. So I'm thinking about copy, but I'm also thinking about strategy. Then I also have my own writing business. I teach mid-level copywriters how to grow and scale their business, right? People who have already successful businesses, I teach them to grow their business into, something more. And then I have children's books. So I have all of these sort of things swimming around in my atmosphere. And yes, they all fall under this one umbrella, but they're all wildly different. So
Right.
on any given day, I might be dealing with the children's books and also creating copy for a client or writing a YouTube script for my YouTube channel, or any number of things can be happening. So it does get a little wild over here.
It's like a very big umbrella. It's like a supersized umbrella for you.
Totally.
We were emailing back when we first met, and we were connecting around this topic, right? That we both wear 100 different hats and things can get kind of crazy. And you said something that made me laugh and it's just like a little worm stuck in my head. And you said, yeah, we're dealing with the juggle struggle. And I think it's like silly, but also profound because it's so damn true, right? We are juggling. And if you're juggling and it's going well, it looks easy, looks beautiful. But the second it's not going well, it's a mess. And it's a real challenge to juggle all of these different roles just as one singular person.
Right. Right. The juggle struggle, I always get the image in my head of the poor entrepreneur who has all of these things like literally being juggled in the air. They're catching the landing pages and they're catching the checkout boxes and they're trying to do all this stuff all at once, plus have their clients or sell their products. And that juggle struggle is like a very finely balanced situation.
Yes.
One step and everything goes awry.
Yep.
Right. And I think that imagery has really kind of, like you said, it makes me giggle too, because at least it brings a little humor. If we don't have the humor, again, what do we have?
Nothing.
Exactly. And so what I always like to tell people is, the we maybe need to put the juggle down and figure out how to balance each of those things. And that comes with the boundaries, right? The juggling stops when we have boundaries. And, somebody recently saw my Google Calendar and he said, wow, Licia, you are using Google Calendar to its fullest capacity.
Yes.
But it's what I have to do in order to put those juggles down and end the struggle. Because if we are always in fear of one thing going awry, then it's going to add to the stress. So at least if we have the boundaries, we can then feel a little bit more like we're in control of our situation and we're not juggling everything so it doesn't fall apart.
Oh man, Licia, that is so well said. And I'm just thinking about that image of the juggler, and I'm just thinking, it's not sustainable. A juggler, it can't keep juggling forever, indefinitely for the next 20 years of your career. But I feel like the juggle, even if you feel like the juggle is going well, it's probably not sustainable. And if your juggle don't have those boundaries to set it down, I imagine burnout is inevitable at some point. It might be next week, it might be 2 years from now, but it's probably inevitable. What do you think about that?
Oh, 100%. Like your central nervous system can't keep up, right? We all know that sort of strung out feeling when we're juggling too much, or we know that something can go, wrong. And if that goes wrong, then everything else goes wrong. Like a couple weeks ago, I missed a meeting and I was like, I never miss. What is happening? Like it just started feeling like the wheels were about to go off the bus. And I think it's just not sustainable. And it's hard to look, you and I both know, Megan, it is hard to have boundaries. I definitely overcommit and have to realign multiple times. Could be in a week, could be in a month, whatever it is. So I guess to your listeners, know that they're not alone. If they're feeling this juggle struggle, they're not alone. But the juggle struggle is not sustainable. One, because we can't keep up at the pace that it requires.
Yeah.
And we won't be able to show up totally pro in our business because we're stretched too thin. And that stretching too thin comes when you don't have boundaries in your business. And when you don't have boundaries in your business, like for me, I start missing meetings or I hand in something that isn't the quality of work that I want it to be. Or if somebody asks me a question, I can barely answer it because I'm thinking about 10 other things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like from the robust to the simple, boundaries and not having them, it can really infect everything else. It also looks like me arguing with my husband because I'm stressed out because I'm juggling too much.
Yeah, I love this. Like, really, let's flesh out here what life looks like when you have bad boundaries. Because sometimes we have to know the red flags. We have to know what behaviors and experiences to spot in our life to clue us in. Like, oh, hey, you might have had great boundaries 2 weeks ago, but this week you're in juggle struggle again and you need to recalibrate. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So when it looks like I have bad boundaries, I am working all the time. Right. Like I'm working too much. All of a sudden I'm working a 15-hour day, and look, here's the other thing. I will happily put in a long day like that. I have no problem with. And oftentimes I need to do that in the way that the nature of my business. But that said, when my work starts to bleed into dinner, like me not being able to get up from my computer for dinner, or, me snapping at my kids because I just need them to go to bed because I need to get back what I'm doing. Like, these are the things that start to tell me, like,
Yes.
all right, Licia, you are the problem here. The thread is pointing back to Licia, not anybody else. It's like,
Right.
I have taken on too much. Everything's bleeding into everything else. And now I have to figure out a way to like rein it back in. And then it looks like me, like this is me not being able to take feedback as well as I normally can. Like one of
More
my
defensive.
Yep, more defensive, more, feeling like, but I thought that was good. And I never
Yeah.
do that because I know the nature of the work requires feedback. So just these small things start to pop up and I start to think to myself, and I want to push them away because I don't want to admit defeat either. Like, I think that's the other thing is I don't want to admit like, oh, I've overstretched myself again. It's like giving up sugar, where it's like,
Yeah.
I'm going to give up sugar. And then you eat a cake and you're like, darn it. I did it again. So
Yeah, I love this. Like looking both at how does burnout and bad boundaries show up in my business, but also how does it show up in my personal life? So in my business, I might be missing meetings or getting defensive with clients or colleagues. But at home, I'm fatigued. I'm ignoring my kids. I'm fighting with my spouse. These are all indicators for you, and honestly, for most of us, that point back to, hey, you have lost sight of your boundaries, and you need to whip yourself into shape. And say that with compassion and gentleness, but also assertiveness. Because like you said, it's on us. It's no one's fault but our own.
yes. Yes. And I love that you said like compassion with assertiveness because that's
Yeah.
really what we need. We need a hard boundary. Somebody has to give us the hard boundary. And, I'm thankful for the people in my life that feel like they can tell me. And I think, we also need the hard boundary with ourselves because we know
Exactly.
inside of ourselves when we've done it again. We know.
Well, and I think other people can reflect back to us. They can be truth tellers. They can reflect back, hey, you're a mess, or hey, you're working too hard, or you're too stressed. And I have like 3 people in my life I know will tell me when I'm out of alignment and I'm like very unpleasant to be around. I have people who will tell me that. But at the end of the day, you are the only one who can set the boundaries with yourself. Nobody, at least not as a solopreneur or a CEO of a small business. You're the only one who can decide that you want to commit to boundaries that keep you in balance.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, let's talk about some boundaries. And the reason, Licia, that I was really excited to have this conversation with you is because you're talking about boundaries in a way I haven't heard anyone else talk about boundaries. I think we're really familiar. We've all heard, batch your time and, set limits and only work with ideal clients. Like we're all familiar with these more expected boundaries. And I'm not diminishing them. They're super important and you do need to do all of them. There are other boundaries too that if we're not paying attention to can really get us into trouble. So the first boundary I heard you talk about are boundaries around marketing and how you show up in the marketing for your business. Can you say more about that?
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite ones because I think we live in an age where it's like, do this, do this. I mean, take the Clubhouse phenomenon, Club came out and everyone was like, get on the Clubhouse train. And I don't know if you felt like this, but suddenly I was like, I can't take on another thing. I can't be on another social platform. And so what happens is that I let people know, pick 1 or 2 avenues on social media that you, number one, know that your clients are on, right? You want to pick the one where like, okay, I know if I post here, people who need what I'm throwing down, they're going to be there, right?
Mhm.
And then pick one or two where you focus all of your attention when you're doing that part of your business to those two platforms. And the reason why I say this is because if you're trying to set it up where you're everywhere, it's just more that you're doing. And again, you're spreading yourselves too thin. And so you can give your permission to say, what are my ideal customers doing on social media? Are they on Instagram? Are they on Facebook? Are they on LinkedIn or YouTube? Where are they consuming content? And then what's beautiful about it is when you choose one or two places, you can give it your all. You can be like, I am going to show up here for the people that I need to show up for. And I am not thinking about my next thing. I am thinking about what I'm doing right now, right here.
Mhm.
And that creates a bubble of, just real power in your messaging and in your content because you're not trying to think of like 18 different ways to say the same thing
Oh,
on six
right.
different platforms.
Yeah.
Right. You're saying one thing on one platform. And then I always tell people your newsletter list is where you should spend most of your time. And you
Mhm.
should be always driving people to your newsletter list because that's a container you can control. Right.
Yeah.
So if we think about our communities and, setting boundaries in our marketing, our newsletter list is a place in a container where we know when we're sending the email, we know that people will be checking their email. There's no algorithm to compete with. So we're not stressed out about that. Like, oh, I didn't get any likes or I didn't get
Mhm.
any shares, like
Right.
you sent the email and people opened it. Right. And then they took action or they didn't, but it's a very cut and dry. So that I always tell people like, you have your social platforms, but also your marketing and your email is it should feel like a nice, relaxing, like I am
Mhm.
talking to my community and I know that I have a container in which I have built for this community.
I think that's great. And the nice and relaxing piece too really resonates for me. Like, yes, pick one or two platforms, make sure your people are there, but also like make sure you like to be there too.
Yeah. Yeah. Oftentimes we forget to put ourselves in the situations we
Right.
enjoy.
Yeah.
And you make it harder. I don't know about you, but I oftentimes will make it harder than it needs to be. Like if I
Mhm.
just show up where I know the people are at, it's a heck of a lot easier than trying to be somewhere that I'm trying to navigate and figure out. And,
Mhm.
there's a lot of unknowns. And it really just creates, again, it's just one more thing on the to-do list. It's not, oh, I get to, it's, oh, I have to.
Mhm. Mhm. Right, right. Which is anytime you're doing what you have to do or what you're supposed to do or what you should do, like you're on your way to burnout town.
Yes. Yeah. And then the other piece that I would say for marketing is let's not do too many things for our offers. So,
Mm,
what
mhm.
I like to tell people is pick your one thing, pick, you know, how you want people to receive a freebie, however that looks. Think about your ICA. Then, pick one service and then you can always build out. But as you're starting out, or if you're feeling
Simple.
overwhelmed and you need new boundaries. Like I have to do this all the time. I always have
Yeah.
to rein it in. I'm an established business owner, but I still go back to the rule of one, one or two ways to get on my email list, one way to work with me, and then like one larger product. Right.
I
And I
think it's
just like,
such a good reminder.
yeah, I dial it back in because no matter how much experience you have, you're always because we are creative people, like we were talking about in the beginning, you're always going to have multiple things. But if you're overwhelmed, you can always go back to your like solid foundational core offers and just go
Yes.
there.
Well, I love this as a rule of thumb in every area of your business. You get one or two things and then you cut yourself off. So you get one or two social platforms, you get one or two opt-ins, you get one or two services that you provide. Like really challenge yourself. If I'm hearing you right, like really challenge yourself not to expand and have all of these ways that you're communicating with people, all of these things you're offering to people. Like it kind of multiplies exponentially, doesn't it? When you're on more platforms and you have more offerings, it very quickly feels out of control.
Yes, yes. And I want to remind people, because I know this feeling, because I have it a lot, of, oh no, but if I'm not showing up in all these other places, or I'm not doing all the things, or I'm not engaging all the things that I know I should, or I quote unquote should be doing, then how will people find me? How will I grow? And I always tell people we have to get smaller to get bigger. And it goes back to that focused energy where we're not overwhelmed and we can actually concentrate on what we're offering. And when we
Mhm.
concentrate on what we're offering, we by default will grow. People will
Mhm.
talk about our services. They'll talk about what we're talking about. They'll share our stuff because it is so influenced by our concentration and our clarity that it just can't help but have its own snowball effect. But we get smaller so that that can get bigger from the action we're taking.
That is such a beautiful golden nugget of wisdom. And I just want to add to the end of that to just again, make sure it feels good to you. Make sure it feels energizing to you. Do fewer things, stay focused, go small, and do all of it in a way that like brings you joy. Because the more focused you are, and I think the more joyful you feel when you're doing the work, like that's when people really can't ignore you and what you have to say.
Exactly. Exactly. They can't help but hear you. The right
Right.
people can't help but hear you.
Okay, so this is perfect. Focus on your email newsletter. Like that is the beating heart of your business. And then pick two places to show up on social media, show up focused, show up joyfully, enjoy the experience, let the rest unfold.
That's right.
Well, let's move on to boundary number two. So, second boundary that I love listening to you talk about is how you set good boundaries with your clients.
I love this one because I think I was just actually talking with a client. We were laughing because I was saying, sometimes I forget that clients hire me to take charge.
Right.
Sometimes as service providers, and this happens, with helpers in and of themselves, like we show up to help, but we sometimes forget that by helping, by very nature, we have to kind of take the lead. And so what I realized after, forgetting this for a bit, I was like, oh, I need to set the stage for my experience with my client so that they are set up for success and that they know I have this handled. This is also something like I recommend too for business owners of like, this is how you show up as a total pro. It can always be edited, but if you show up with good boundaries with your clients to start, everybody wins. And so, what I always tell people is have a welcome packet. When somebody hires you and you're working with them, whether that's for a day or an hour or a retainer, whatever it is, have a welcome email that says, hey, I'm so excited to work with you. And then name when you're working together. And this is what you can expect from our time together. And then give them several bullet points of expectations for your time together. And then add in any documents they need to have access to, and then let them know any housekeeping, like your hours of operation and the amount of time it takes you to get back to emails and when they can expect deliverables. All of these things go in this welcome packet. And then you just keep circling back to them with your clients to say, like, oh, remember in the welcome email, we talked about this, or I let you know that my working hours are this, just so you know, if you send me any edits over the weekend, I will get back to you on Monday, right? So now
Mhm.
you're starting to show them and help them understand how to work with you.
Mhm.
Plus, a lot of times when clients overstep boundaries, it's because they're concerned that their needs aren't going to be met. And rightfully
Mhm.
so. If we haven't communicated our boundaries or their
Mhm.
expectations, they should be concerned because they're like,
Right.
we don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And so this serves two purposes. Setting boundaries with your clients not only helps you set yourself up for a successful working relationship, but it also helps your client understand, when they can expect things. So there's no fear of, oh gosh, I just hired this person. Now what? Right. They
Mhm.
are
Mhm.
fully informed. And I also tell people the more you communicate, the better, because that's going to hold those boundaries time and time again, because you're preemptively reminding your client, hey, just so you know, this is what you can expect. I
Yeah.
will talk to you tomorrow or whatever it is.
I love this idea of over communicating. I love the idea of the welcome packet. I'm going to start doing that tomorrow. It's such a good idea. And it's just this idea that it's our responsibility to teach our clients how to work with us. I think
Yes.
that's like this thought that's popping into my mind as I'm listening to you is we teach people how to treat us. And if you're feeling frustrated in your work with your clients, it's very likely your fault as the business owner that you haven't taught them what to expect, how you like to function, when they can contact you, how you like to communicate with them. And I love this idea of just from day one, spell that out, put it in writing, send it in an email, and then get into the habit of repeating it over and over and over again in a very sweet, kind, loving way. I mean, do it. It can be consistent with your style, but chances are you aren't communicating enough right now about what your boundaries and expectations are.
Yes. Yes. And I will add, so recent feedback I got, and this might be true for listeners too, was by the time I had set a boundary with, and it was my dear friend, and she's very gracious, but by the time I had set a boundary, she said, you know what? It feels harsh when you
Mhm.
finally
Yes.
like set a boundary, because what happens is that you're so ready for that boundary, but I am not aware of
Yeah.
you being ready for that boundary, and you've never made it clear that you needed the boundary.
Yeah. It feels
So
like punishment.
yes, and here's what, Megan, like you and I can both laugh. Like for me, it's like it's funny that I'm talking about boundaries, but because I've been so bad at boundaries, I have to think about them all the time. And so
Yeah.
it's always, and I want to just like remind people this is a learning curve. It's always
Mhm.
going to be evolving. And,
Absolutely.
I think we're
No
always
one has this figured out.
exactly, exactly. So when my friend said that, I was like, oh, interesting. I should probably refine my boundary setting process then.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. One of my favorite quotes ever is from Pima Chodron. And it's so simple, but she says, boundaries are compassionate. And I tell myself this several times a week because as healers and helpers, people who are conditioned to do work for other people, we are just really taught that we need to be nice and we need to be like yes women and we need to like show up and be available. And it's easy to lose our sense of agency. It's easy to lose our kind of power in the relationship and we tell ourselves like I don't want to be mean or I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or I don't want to step in on anybody's toes. The reality is like when you don't do those things, when you don't step up and have boundaries, just like your friend said, you're doing like you did your friend a disservice by
Right.
not communicating to her about what you needed and it came back to bite you in the ass when you finally did set that boundary and it didn't feel good to her.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I think that's what we often forget, that I love that quote by Pema Chodron, boundaries are compassion, because we do feel like they're not compassionate, but in
Yes.
reality, it's clear communication. I can do this, I cannot do this.
Oh, yeah. It's just so compassionate. It takes the guesswork out of it for me as your client. I don't have to wonder if I'm, like you said, I don't have to wonder if I'm being taken care of. I don't have to wonder what to expect. Yeah. I mean, there's no greater gift than someone just saying, hey, here's where I'm at. Here's what to expect. Let me know if you have any problem with any of this and we can talk it out.
Yes. Yes. I love it.
So this is, yeah, I mean, this is huge. I know boundaries are hard. Boundaries are really hard for all of us, especially women, especially healers and helpers. So we're at a disadvantage, but I think we can support each other in learning how to be better boundary setters. And that story of your friend giving you that feedback is such a beautiful example of what it looks like to be in a great relationship where you can teach each other something.
Exactly. And I think too for the healers and helpers, this is this is something that we're so used to giving, right? We give, we're helping, we're helpers. Like this is what we do. We want to be in service. And I think that one thing I always have to remind myself is that I am of no service if I have gone too far in the opposite direction of having good boundaries. I can't
Yes.
serve at all because I'm like spun out or I'm spinning my wheels or I can't make a decision or, I can't even, send an email because I just don't even have the capacity for like, what am I going to say right now? I'm so tired. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that, it is something for people in helping professions that we do need to remember because it is such an important component because it does help us stay grounded so that we can really show up for the people that we're trying to help.
Yes. Yeah, we can show up for them and we can show up for ourselves.
Yes.
Because, right, when I listen to you talk about how you set boundaries and what it enables you to do, we're talking now about the good stuff it enables you to do in your business. But let's just flip the coin over for a minute and look at what it enables you to do in your life. You can have dinner with your kids. You can put them to bed. You can have a great interaction with your spouse. You can have good friendships. Like that can only happen if you have these good boundaries and these good working relationships with your clients inside of your business.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Fantastic. You bring just Licia, every time I hear you talk about boundaries, I'm just really I so admire the wisdom you bring into this conversation and your willingness to say, "Hey, I'm still learning this, and I'm not perfect." And this the whole idea for this interview was born when you and I were joking about how we talk about boundaries and often have really terrible boundaries. And like, what if we have a conversation about boundaries by people who have no boundaries? Because that's all of us.
It's true. And I think we live in a world where, because of social media or whatever, we have these expert status of, oh, I'm so good at this and I've mastered this. And it's like, I'm just here to just let everybody know, like, I in no way, if you peeked behind the curtain, like I have good boundaries and I know how to set them and I'm getting better. But if on any given week, you might peek behind the curtain and be like, whoa, why is she talking about boundaries? Like she's
Right.
not that good at these. But this is what teaching is, right, Megan?
Yeah.
It's doing the very thing that it's teaching the very thing that we ourselves must contend with. And I think the people that are contending with boundary setting and learning and growing as they do, and then, sliding backwards, like we talking about this, it's like, okay, sure, this is what we hope to achieve. And we are imperfectly human and very creative people. And sometimes we go off track and that's okay. But now we know how to get back on track because we have learned more with this than we did know before. And I think that's a good thing for people to remember too. Like we're constantly learning. And so accept that we can be open to the learning process and also be able to, in that learning process, set boundaries that we maybe didn't have before.
Absolutely. And there's tremendous power in doing what you're doing here with me today, pulling back the curtain and letting people see and talking about boundaries and talking about burnout and being really honest about what's working and what's not working and meeting each other with this spirit of compassion and support, validation. Like we're all in this together. It doesn't matter if you make, $50,000 a year or $5 million a year. Like it doesn't matter. This at the end of the day, we're all human and we have the same set of needs. And if we just give each other feedback and share what's working and what's not working, we can all do this in a way that leads to success and leads to us feeling really good in our lives.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, this is so good. Okay, well, let's shift into the third and final boundary for this conversation. And this, Licia, is where I think you really come to life. You are the only person I have ever met who is talking about this boundary in particular. And it's all about what you do with your clients after you're finished working with them. So a boundary that you can have with your clients once they're technically like not your client anymore. Can you tell us more about that? I'm so excited.
Yeah. So oftentimes I feel like when we wrap up with the client, there's like a loop that needs to be closed. It's like, okay, we send our final email, we have our final conversation, and then what? And I think a lot of times, as business owners, because we know that testimonials are super helpful for other customers. So testimonials and reviews are super helpful for other customers as they're making decisions. I often like to end a contract by asking for a testimonial. Why do I do that? Just because it's sort of like the final piece that says, okay, we are complete. And, I'd love to hear more about your experience. Did you enjoy it? And there's two reasons that I like the testimonial as part of the boundary of ending, right? Of wrapping up. Number one, it gives your client the ability to reflect on all that was achieved and all that they enjoyed, right? It gives them a moment to actually close the loop on the project themselves. They get to say like, wow, we've achieved this over X amount of, time. That's amazing. And then they can also reflect on what really worked for them in the process so that when they either hire you again or, if they're hiring another service provider, they can reflect themselves of like, this really works for me. So I'm going to ask for this in the future. Right. So what this ending of asking for the testimonial when a project is complete actually does is it sort of like wraps the box, right? You put the bow on it and it says, we have done this work together. Let's celebrate our time that we've had together. There's no sort of loose ends then, there's no question of like, what next or, and so what I like to do is I'll send an end of project email, which is like a closing email similar to the welcome packet. And I will review, this is the time frame we've worked together. Here's all the things we've accomplished. And I will make a bulleted list. Here's what you need to know as you move forward and any kind of housekeeping things that they need to know. And then finally, I'll say, and I would love it if you'd be open for offering up a testimonial. And then I tell them why. I'd love a testimonial, not only so that I can showcase the work we did together, but also so you can feel complete as well. And you can really dive into like what worked for you. And it just feels always a really nice ending to a time together with a client. And you can, I had a beautiful conversation with one of my clients at the end because she was like, well, could we hop on a phone call and I'll talk through the testimonial with you. And if you want to record it or take notes, you can. And then, I was like, great. And I just got so much great voice of customer information as well.
Oh, yeah.
Her feedback was really helpful because she was like, I didn't know that I was getting this when I hired you. And it was just a lot of great information. And I think that what happens is that the testimonials and that final email are the thing that just close the loop, and it's a boundary of completion. They can always hire you again for sure, but boundary of completion for the work you just finished.
That is so lovely. Boundary of completion. It feels good to hear you say that. Like it feels complete, like you said, in a way that is fulfilling and encouraging. I love that it gives everyone an opportunity to reflect on the progress, the growth that has, happened in your work together. I heard you once talk about it from a slightly different angle too. I heard you say, like, it's an opportunity for you to ask for what you need from your client.
Yes.
And I thought that was so brilliant because as the service provider, as the business owner, there's often not a lot of space for us to say, oh, well, here's what I need from you. And this is a really beautiful way to kind of step into that space and to say, hey, I'm in this too. This relationship, even though you were paying me, it is a two-way street. And what a great opportunity for me to practice asking another human being for what I need. I don't know. Am I getting that right for you, Licia?
Yes. And thank you for that. It's true. It's a practice of asking for what you need and want, right? So sure, we need testimonials, but we also want them, right? So we need them for our business, but it's great to have them as customer feedback, and we want them so we can know how to do it better. And being in service and being, somebody who works with clients, you're right. Oftentimes we don't often have the opportunity to say like, okay, this is what I need now as part of our time together. And I think a lot of people get nervous asking for that at the end. And the reason why I like to wait till the end is because we are in service to that client. We are providing a service, right? But at the end, it's like, okay, do you need anything else from me? No. Okay. Then generally the customer will be like, anything else that we need to go over? And then it is a practice for asking for what we want, because then we can ask for anything in our life.
Yes. I mean, I feel like yes, that's what is so thrilling to me about this conversation. If you can do this, you can go ask for anything.
Exactly. Exactly. And so if a testimonial is the practice that you need in order to get what you need in other areas of your life, like let it be that, because
Yeah.
it's a super fun way to get great feedback. And it's also a great way to practice. Like I am now asked, it's terrifying to ask for testimonials, I think, for a lot of people.
Super vulnerable.
Yeah, because you're not used to asking for what you want in your life. I mean, that's what the problem was for me. Like, I'm always nervous about it because I'm like, oh, it's hard for me to ask for what I want. But I started practicing. I was like, this actually is really helpful. And your clients will want to give it to you.
Yes.
People want you to ask for help. This is something that was like also part of the boundaries that I had to learn, was that boundary making is actually also asking for help. Sometimes what people, they think we're capable of doing all the things we're doing, but in reality, we need help. And when you can ask for help, that's so freeing. And it actually is a good boundary for the receiver, because they're like, oh, this person might be feeling overwhelmed. She's asking for help. That's great. I can help her. There's a boundary. Asking for help is actually its own kind of boundary.
Absolutely. Yeah. Giving people who care about you an opportunity to help you is very powerful. And also, you said this just a second ago, like, why is it that we are so conditioned to think like people are doing us a favor by giving us a testimonial, instead of operating on the assumption that these clients who we've just helped, like, they want to do this for us. It actually like brings, when people I have worked with, who I've loved working with, ask me for a testimonial, it brings me joy to be able to do that for them. I don't feel burdened or put out. I feel like genuinely happy that I have the opportunity to like share these words with the world so that other people can know about the great work that we did. I think there's a mindset piece here that we really have to shift. It's not a burden. No one's doing you a favor by giving you a testimonial. Like, you're giving people an opportunity to do something that will bring them happiness.
Yes. I mean, think about just even by way of asking, somebody if where they got their haircut, how thrilled out of their mind they are to tell you about their stylist. You know what I mean? Or
yes.
If somebody says, where's a good restaurant to go to in your town? And people are always ecstatic to be like, let me tell you, and I think it's the same here, allow people to be in that joy of expressing what they were able to receive, and, having that mindset of saying like, no, it's a joy for people to say that they had a good experience. It really is.
And we all need to get a little more comfortable receiving praise. I think that's part of it too, right? It's like, oh, there's this vulnerability and this discomfort when people are saying nice things about us. And I think we could all do a better job of, just like, it's okay to be a little narcissistic sometimes. Like, enjoy those words. You worked hard for them.
Exactly. And I will take that from you because, I know that you have training in these things.
Yeah, that's just coming from a licensed therapist. I say it is okay to be narcissistic.
Exactly.
Okay, this is so fantastic. Okay, well, quick logistical question I'm curious about. Like, when you're asking for these testimonials, do you have a preference between people giving you written testimonials versus doing like recorded video testimonials? And do you like being the person asking the questions, or do you have another person on your team do the asking?
So I do all the asking, and it really is, I will take whatever the client is most readily and easily able to give me. So if somebody says, can I just send you a Loom? And so I have a testimonial template that I send, and it has prompts because, people staring at a blank page is never good either.
Yeah.
So what I do is I will ask them, here are the prompts. If you would like to record it, feel free. I'll just transcribe it and, send it back to you for review. Or if you'd like to write it out, I can take that as well. So it's really, I try to make it as easy as possible because people are busy, right?
Yeah,
so I just want to make it as easy as possible for them to write the review or the testimonial. And people often say, like, should I have video testimonials on my website? I think you think about your ICA and think, do they want to consume a testimonial from the video? Like, do they want to listen to it or watch it? Like, how are they consuming content? Like, if a lot of your customers are on YouTube and that's where you spend a lot of your time, then you might want to have some video testimonials because they obviously like videos. But for me, I always tell people, just think about your ICA and think about how they would want to consume that on your services page or on your sales page. And you can offer a variety too. You can have both written and verbal. So, that from that ability to, if somebody just wants to listen, great. Or if they want to read it, great. It's just really depends.
Yeah, I love the being flexible, giving people options, choose what feels best for you, thinking about your ideal client and what they want to consume. And at the end of the day, having variety because, people, some days I want to read, some days I want to watch. So why not have a mixture of both?
Exactly. Who doesn't have a choice?
This is right. I know. And choices like this, another great boundary is like giving choice and then trusting that when someone is presented with options and they choose one of those options, you can trust that they've just really consented to doing that thing for you. I think that's another thing about boundaries and giving choice and having choice. Okay, that's a conversation for a different day. I'm about to go down my boundaries rabbit hole. Not going to do it. Resisting the urge. Okay, so let's rewind and just look at this beautiful container, Licia, that you have created for us. Thinking about, I'm almost like framing this in my mind as like unexpected boundaries or unconventional business boundaries, but so crucial. And if we all implement what you've suggested today, I think we are well on our way to creating these burnout-proof businesses. So one, we want to have great boundaries with our marketing. Limit yourself, pick one or two social media platforms, focus on your email newsletter, and show up in those places in ways that feel really good and energizing for you. Boundary number 2, set great boundaries with your clients. Be a compassionately assertive communicator. Let people know what to expect from you. Let people know what you expect from them. And I love how you said over communicate. So just be communicating all of the time about what these boundaries are. So there's never any question. And be receptive when people that you love or people that you're working with are giving you feedback that, hey, your boundaries aren't so great or there's not as much clarity here for me. Don't be defensive. Just meet that with curiosity and an openness to adjusting your framework. And then, of course, this new boundary about asking for what you need, especially after the project has wrapped up. Don't be afraid to ask for testimonials. Give people an opportunity to give you feedback, to sing your praises, and learn how to feel really good about that. That sound good? Anything you want to add to that container?
No, I think this is like, I hope for people that they feel empowered, to at least try some of these and see what works for them.
Absolutely. You are full of so much wisdom, Licia, and I couldn't be more grateful that you took the time to share this information with us here at the Rest and Success Code.
I ended this conversation with Licia feeling so inspired to implement new boundaries in my business, and I hope the same is true for you. Also, I hope that you're walking away from this conversation knowing that it is possible to be a deeply rested, multi-passionate entrepreneur. If you'd like to see what Licia is up to these days, you can check out her new business, Arista Management Group, at aristamanagementgroup.com. That's ARISTA managementgroup.com. You can also find this link in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Deeply Rested. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would love to invite you to join the Deeply Rested weekly newsletter. You can sign up at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. I hope to meet you in my inbox very soon.